to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you. And that press record, so now we're good to go. In terms, I know you outlined a little bit of your plan here, but can you just walk us through what is the minimum sort of number for you to say, all right, we can sort of declare a victory here, whether it's first or not,
Yep.
and then take us through the steps to Iowa, to South Carolina. What does this look like?
I think solidly shattering the media's preset expectations and the polling expectations set in each state puts us exactly on the path that we need to achieve success. And I think that we're going to do that here in Iowa. I mean, you saw it in the room today. It's emblematic of rooms across this state. First-time caucus goers who are not polled, we shatter that expectation. We're going to be exactly where we want to be. I prefer the expectations where they are now. The other candidates, I think they're going to disappoint where they're at. I'm going to be the only candidate that significantly exceeds those expectations, propels us forward to New Hampshire, then Nevada, and onward from there. So that's what this looks like.
And what are those? What are
Solid double-digit finish in Iowa
Okay.
puts us exactly on the trajectory we need to be, which is way ahead of where the polling narrative has been set up.
And then what happens in New Hampshire?
Well, what happens in New Hampshire is this will propel us forward to be in a different category. When we beat the media expectations and the polling expectations here, then that propels us to a different place in New Hampshire. I think the field is going to narrow after Iowa. I think there are going to be certain candidates that will be eliminated after Iowa. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm going to be one that's actually on the rise coming out of this state, and we look forward to that.
Okay, a couple more.
Who are you with?
Freedom News
Okay.
TV.
Okay, got it.
Governor DeSantis said he won't be removing his name from the ballot in Colorado, even if Trump is disqualified. If this continues and other states remove Trump from the ballot and other candidates do not, do you think you're at a disadvantage if you are the only other candidate not on that ballot?
I think the reality is we're seeing increasingly a system that is determined not to allow Trump to get anywhere near the White House. That's what we're seeing. They're trying every tactic in the book, and I think it's shameful. But I think that further makes sure that I, as the other America First candidate in this race, can take this agenda further. And I think it's shameful that Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, I think they're complicit in what the other side is doing in this election interference if they're playing by that same set of games. And I do think that it's telling that many of the people who are paying to keep them off the ballot are the ones propping up these other candidates. And so I think we're going to see some seismic events in 2024 that shake this race up, and it gives me my sense of responsibility to not only stay in this now, but through the very finish when I expect to be the nominee. And so I strongly disagree with their decision. I condemn it. And I think that they should stand up with the spine to this flagrant election interference. And, you know, I called on them to do it, and I hope they're courageous enough to step up and follow my lead.
Can you
Mr.
elaborate?
Ramaswamy, you've said in the past that Haley is masquerading as a Republican. What do you think about her attracting moderate independents to her campaign?
I don't, no problem with people bringing new voters into this party. We're doing that at a regular scale. What I have a problem with is the very people who are propping up the far left and the efforts to remove, say, Trump or others from the ballot are the same people, Reid Hoffman, George Soros Jr., Larry Fink, the king of the ESG industrial complex, now infiltrating the Republican Party to prop up a convenient puppet. I think that's wrong. I think that's a form of election interference as well. And I think that that is not good for the Republican Party, and it's not good for this country. And I think there's an ideological divide. I stand for free speech in this country. I stand for free speech. I don't believe that you should have to tie your government-issued ID to your social media profile. I think that's totalitarian, it's Orwellian, it's wrong. I don't care if that comes from a Democrat or a Republican. I don't think we should be using our own money to fight somebody else's war halfway around the world when we're not taking care of our own veterans and our own borders and our own citizens right here at home. I think much of that is corrupt. So I think that's an ideological divide, and it is telling that the people you're attracting are really mega donors that have been propping up agendas that have been hostile to this country and even to the Republican Party. That's what I'm against, and I'm going to be unsparing in calling it out. You have one?
Yeah, for the debates happening, are you planning to participate in Iowa, New Hampshire, and with the polling requirements for New Hampshire?
We're going to participate in the ABC debate in New Hampshire. I think it was, frankly, a little bit offensive that CNN cut off our town hall that we did 5 minutes early with a completely different narrative relative to anybody who watched that town hall versus the narrative that CNN propped up and put out. It was a great event that we had at Grandview College, and you look at their description of it, cutting it off 5 minutes early, that was shameful. So I'm not playing those games with CNN either. They're trying to play games. I'm not going to play games in response. We've actually hit 13% in probably the most credible poll that was done in Iowa was that large morning consult poll. They're clearly playing a game. They don't want the audience to hear from me, and I think that goes in both directions. But the ABC poll next month, the ABC debate in New Hampshire, I will commit to participate in.
Are you confident that you'll reach the polling threshold
For
that
ABC?
debate?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we'll be on the stage for the WMUR ABC debate.
You talked about Dems not propping up Michelle Obama or Newsom, but now Nikki Haley. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Are you saying Nikki Haley's going to run as a Democrat?
You know, I think that some of this is going to fly over the head of some of the media that's very, I don't mean to be disrespectful of you all. I know you're here on dispatch from your employers, but I think that this is going to be a little bit above your heads in terms of what's going on. Our Republican base understands it, so I don't think I'm going to be able to translate it in a language that you're going to be able to understand, but suffice to say that I'm going to lead the people of our movement to understand what the heck is actually happening. The infiltration of our own party with interests that have actually been hostile to what we stand for in this movement, that's exactly what's happening in plain sight. And I think that 2024 is going to be a year that includes, I think, some very unexpected moves in this race. I think it's increasingly clear that the bipartisan establishment is hell-bent on making sure Trump comes nowhere near that White House. I think that's going to really change some realities in this race. I think it's for the worse. I'm dead set against it. But what you really see is the very people who have been funding the efforts to keep Trump off the ballot. Follow the money in terms of who those people are propping up. It's not a Democrat, it's actually within the Republican Party. And I think that becomes far more devious, it becomes far more insidious. And I think it's gonna take somebody that sees exactly what's happening to stand up, speak out against it, but most importantly to win this race. And so I'm not gonna, bother explaining this to media. We're gonna talk to the voters of this country to open their eyes to see what's going on. And I think they're gonna speak with their votes in making me the nominee and ultimately letting us lead this country for the next 8 years.
Are you saying she would maybe leave the Democratic Party?
I think that this is way over your head, and I'm, with all due respect, I'm just gonna be as respectful as I can. I think that you're operating at a very different wavelength than what I'm standing for, which is a more complicated reality that hopefully you'll see 6 months from now as it unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
If elected,
Appreciate it.
what is your move on Israel and on Ukraine?
So I believe that I'm running for president of the United States, not president of another country. And my view is we have to look at every conflict abroad through exclusively the lens of what advances American interests. And that's different in each situation. That doesn't mean that we retreat from every situation. We just have to look through each situation of what best advances American interests. I think a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine is the right answer. I think it's better for Ukraine, it's better for the United States, and I think it's better for all parties involved. That deal would require Russia to exit its military alliance with China. That's the single most objective we could accomplish for the United States to avoid World War III. But in return, we would make, above all, the commitment, which I think we should be willing to make, that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. It's consistent with what James Baker pledged to Gorbachev in 1990, the not 1 inch commitment past East Germany. I do think we should stand by that. And I think a reasonable deal that ends the bloodshed, that ends the shipping over of endless amounts of U.S. taxpayer money. And I think that's a deal that I would ultimately be able to lead diplomatically that would be good for all parties involved. As it relates to Israel, I think Israel has an absolute right to its own national self-defense. And the U.S.'s job is to provide the diplomatic support for Israel to defend itself. A diplomatic iron dome without the EU, the UN, or the US, or anybody else second-guessing their decisions. I think we muddy the waters when we're half in, half out. And so I don't think it's the US's job to engage militarily in any way. And I think it's better for Israel and better for the United States. So I hope that addresses your questions.
Thank you. Thank you.